The Phantom Time Hypothesis. In the dead of winter, when the wind howled like a lost soul through the streets of medieval Europe, something strange happened. The Holy Roman Emperor Otto III stood before his advisers, his eyes fixed on the ancient calendar. The year was 1000, and the emperor wanted to mark the turn of the millennium with more than just celebration. He wanted to make a statement, to lay claim to a period of time that had been lost to history. He wanted to be a part of something greater, a world that had been built upon centuries of divine rule. But there was a problem: the gap. The years between 614 and 911 AD, the period following the fall of the Western Roman Empire, were shrouded in darkness. There were no records, no kings, no battles, no events. Just a black hole of history. And Otto needed those years desperately, to legitimize his reign, to craft a narrative that would elevate his empire. And so the unthinkable happened. History was rewritten. In the cold, candlelit chambers of the Holy Roman Empire, scholars began to fill in the gaps. Rulers were invented, battles fabricated, and entire periods of time meticulously constructed to make it appear as if the empire had been thriving for centuries longer than it had. They planted false records, deliberately misdated events, and created a false sense of continuity. To Otto III, it didn't matter whether it was true or not. It only mattered that the past could be bent to serve the present. Fast forward to the late 20th century, and historian Herbert Illig, while flipping through dusty old records in a dimly lit archive, stumbled upon something odd. His fingers paused on a passage that seemed off. It was a record of an eclipse that had supposedly occurred in 784 AD, but when he examined it further, something didn't add up. The timing of the eclipse, the astronomical data, everything seemed to conflict with what had been recorded in other historical texts. And then he remembered the strange gap, the years between 614 and 911 AD, that no one could explain. What if, he wondered, these years had been fabricated? Illig's mind raced. What if the entire span of time from 614 to 911 AD was a fabrication, a grand lie created by Otto III and his court to legitimize their empire's place in history? The more he dug, the more he found. Records that didn't match. Rulers who seemed to appear from nowhere. Events that couldn't have happened when they were said to. It was as though the Holy Roman Empire had constructed an entire historical period, one that never existed, and had done so thoroughly that no one had even questioned it. Illig's findings led him to an unsettling conclusion. If the phantom time hypothesis was correct, then we weren't living in the year 2024 at all. We were living in the year 1727, with nearly 300 years of history invented, fabricated, and placed between us and the truth. The entire medieval period, with its kings, wars, and empires, could have been a carefully crafted illusion. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If an entire period of history could be invented, what else had been manipulated? What other records had been altered to fit a certain narrative? Illig couldn't stop the thoughts from spiraling. Was the history of the world nothing but a collection of lies, told by those in power to shape the world as they saw fit? To make sense of it all, Illig returned to the documents he'd uncovered, trying to find a pattern, a mistake, something that could prove he wasn't going mad. He spent weeks poring over old texts, comparing dates, names, and events. The gaps became wider, the contradictions more glaring, and then it hit him. A chilling realization that left him frozen in place. The entire concept of time, as we know it, was built on the back of a massive lie. As Illig began to speak out about his findings, he was met with skepticism and disdain. Most historians dismissed his theory as impossible, a wild conspiracy with no real evidence. But Illig couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was out there, hidden in plain sight. After all, the records were too perfect, the dates too well arranged. The 297 years between 614 and 911 AD were missing. And, in their place, a carefully constructed story of a world that may have never existed. But if history had been fabricated, what else had been hidden from the public? Could everything we knew, our calendars, our understanding of the past, be part of some greater deception? Could we truly be living in the year 1727, just a few centuries behind the rest of the world? Illig's theory haunted him long after he presented his findings, the mystery of the missing years lingering like an unanswered question, one that could shatter the very fabric of our understanding of time. The phantom time hypothesis remains an enigma, its implications as chilling as they are impossible to ignore. Whether or not we are living in 2024 or 1727, the question remains, how much of our history is real, and how much has been crafted by those who held the power to shape it? The answers perhaps are locked away in the shadows of time, waiting to be uncovered, or forever lost to the ages.